Hello, I'm the Doctor. I'm a Time Lord from the planet Gallifrey, constellation of Kasterborous. I'm about 950 years old, and I'm here to save you and 6 billion people in the planet. Any questions? Right. I don't see. This here's my first Doctor Who action figure I ever had. I mean, this is my first, and I'm pretty happy to have one because ever since I became a Doctor Who fan, I always wanted a Doctor Who figurine, and I finally got the iconic one of all, David Tennant. Speaking about David Tennant, this is another episode of Doctor Who-Athon. Ooh So right now I'm just going to be sipping my cup of Earl Grey. Well, that's good. And I'm going to be talking to you about the Tennant error. And of course, David Tennant played the Doctor in 2005 all the way to 2010. And one thing I got to say about David Tennant here, he's the reason. I mean, he was the reason who made me became a Whovian as I am today. Because he is the most iconic one of them all. Even though the classics had Tom Baker, the modern has Doctor Who. And he makes pop cultural reference, kind of like what I do. And of course, he's kind of fast wit, little quirky, kind of funny. I mean, I have to say that he was the most unforgettable, memorable 10th Doctor in the series, ever since Eccleston left the show. Now, let's start to the first mission that he gets himself involved in. In this one, the Doctor, he regenerates into David Tennant and end up in the episode called The Christmas Invasion. But of course, it turns out that the Christmas tree keeps coming to life, and there's those mechanical Santa Clauses out there who starts attacking people. And turns out there's these alien species who calls himself the Saskara. They're like shark-like alien species, and they put everybody who has a B-positive blood type be hypnotized into the edge, making them think they're going to jump off a cliff and kill themselves. Until the Doctor finally got back out of his slumber after his regeneration. And therefore, he challenged him to a sword fight, which the Doctor is really good with a sword. And of course, the leader cuts his hand off and loses his hand. But of course, he'd gone through regeneration. That means he still have a bit of a generation left, so he grew himself a new hand. Look at that hand. Always love the hand. And when he touched it, wham! I'll get to that later. But of course, he won the battle in his pajamas. And he even mentioned it, saying, "Not bad for a guy who fought in his Jim Jams. A bit like Arthur Dent. I met him. Right, great guy." And for those of you who don't know who Arthur Dent is, that's from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. You see, around 2005, the movie Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy came out. But, to my opinion, it was good, but it was too rushed. They should have made it into a TV series. But to my opinion, the radio show was a lot better on Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, because Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is my all-time favorite Doctor Who series. And of course, after the Doctor dealt with that alien, Harriet Jones, who became the Prime Minister, she launched a nuclear missile, and the Doctor did not like that. Last thing he needs is more deaths by other species. But But Harriet Jones thinks that has to happen to let the aliens know that they're not supposed to be messed with. There's a peaceful way to do it, but wiping out one species from one ship, it's uncalled for. So therefore, Harriet Jones is no longer Prime Minister. She had to resign because of what the doctor said. So, anyway, the doctor decided to wear his outfit, which he wore this outfit, which is the most iconic one of them all. I like him better in long brown coat than just wearing that pinstripe blue suit, to my opinion. And he spends Christmas with Rose, Mickey, and this time David Tennant's doctor finally called him Mickey because Christopher Eccleston always kept calling him Ricky, but it's pronounced Mickey, and of course Jackie. And of course it turns out that the doctor and Rose, they went back into the future, and it turns out that Cassandra O'Brien is back. Somehow they took the front side of her skin, but now they just stretch out the backside of her skin, which Rose pointed out that she's talking from her ass. But of course, it turns out there is these cat-like species who calls himself the cat-kind. They're supposed to be like the evolutionary of cats who now evolves to humans. And they dressed up as nuns, and they were hiding a bunch of contaminated zombies. But, as usual, the doctor cured them, and now everything is in peace. And, of course, he also meet the face of Bo again. And it turns out, at first they thought he was going to die, but he still lives again. And then another episode, they went all the way to the past in the Victorian era and met Queen Victoria, played by Pauline Collins. And of course it's hinting that a brand new organization who calls himself Torchwood is started. That they're going to deal with extraterrestrials, and at first they don't trust the Doctor. Gee, UNIT trusts the Doctor, why can't Torchwood? And of course there was a whole deal with Kung Fu monks, and of course leading to a werewolf. And then the Doctor ended up in the class reunion where he pretended to be a teacher while Rose pretended to be a cafeteria worker. And therefore, he gets reunited for one of his old companions, Sarah Jane Smith, played by Elizabeth Slane. And of course, they had a bit of get-together, and even Rose, who was a little jealous, talked to Sarah Jane, and then they start talking about the silly quirks that the Doctor always does. Which it kind of makes the Doctor feels like, are you girls talking about me? Which that reminds me, I should put something on my audio drama that Hannah was talking to the TARDIS and start having girl talk over me. But of course, they also met a brand new K9, so pretty much Sarah Jane Smith and K9 showed up. And of course, the Doctor did ask Sarah Jane to go through another adventure one last time, but she says no, she'd rather stay here with K9, and therefore started a certain spin-off called The Sarah Jane Adventures. Now, the reason why I'm not going to be talking about The Sarah Jane Adventures, because you might think, I like Doctor Who, I might like its spin-off. Well, The Sarah Jane Adventures is geared towards kids, and I only saw 2 episodes where the Doctor made an appearance in, because I only prefer episodes that involves the Doctor and no one else. So, I didn't really care about the Sarah Jane Adventures or Torchwood. And of course, K9 himself, he has his own spin-off in Australia. Yeah, there's an Australian series of K9. And he's more advanced. And of course, the creatures they were dealing with are these called the Quilliatons. Vampiric-like creatures. And of course, we have this and of course, as usual, the Doctor always stops them and move on. And then all of a sudden, the Doctor went into the past and met Renette, played by Sophie Mills. Which some people may not know that Renette is none other than Madame de Pompadour. And of course, there was that famous line that the Doctor says, "I just snog Madame de Pompadour." Huh. But it turns out that there was a group of robots who calls themselves the Clockwork Droids who was trying to kill her and her people and trying to use their body parts as their engine. Ugh, I hate that. And then there was an episode called The Rise of the Cybermen, and it turns out that it's an alternate universe. And of course, in this alternate universe, England has a president instead of prime minister, so there's no king and queen involved. So I guess in the alternate universe, England becomes patriotic. Patriotism. And of course, Rose met her dad, and she's trying to connect with him, but in this alternate universe, her father is a successful businessman, and he's alive, he's a double agent, and he doesn't have a daughter named Rose. He has a dog named Rose, but not a daughter. And of course, his wife, she turned into a Cyberman, sadly, so she's gone. While this crippled guy, he wanted to rebuild his body by becoming a Cyberman because he was getting weak. And he thinks the whole world should become Cybermen. Big mistake. And even Mickey, in his alternate universe, there's an alternate version of Mickey who calls himself Ricky. And since Ricky died, he decided to take over. And the reason why he stayed is because his grandmother is alive in the alternate universe. So that's why he decided to stay, so he can be with his grandmother. Imagine that. And then the next episode, called The Idiot Box, takes place in 1953, where there is this magpie electrical, which turns out they are the Wire. And what Magpie's trying to do is trying to take the face out of their victims while they're looking at their first television came out in 1953. It was during the time when television was made. And of course, it was during the same time when everybody is going to celebrate the reveal of the becoming of Queen Elizabeth II. Now, this gives me a good chance for me to tell you this, folks. I respected and honored Queen Elizabeth. Call me a royalist, but I have a lot of respect to the royal family. So, I really like Queen Elizabeth. If she was alive today, I would have loved to show her my respects by bowing to her. And if I did great things in England, I wouldn't mind being knighted. Hmm, that might be interesting. Sir Michael A. Grimm. Rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? But of course, I'm a little iffy on King Charles III. Because, I mean, I remember in the past how he was when he was with Diane, and of course that actress, and what happened to Princess Diane, which was really shameful and disrespect, because those paparazzis take a picture of her while she has a car accident. I mean, that was uncalled for. But of course, there's the royal family I do respect more. I mean, I would love to meet Prince William and his wife Kate because I have more respect for them. I mean, if I ever met them, I would show my respects to them, even bow to them. But don't get me started on Prince Harry and Meghan. I freaking hate them. Especially Meghan. Just because she's an American doesn't give her the right to open her goddamn mouth and get all snobby about it. I mean, seriously, folks, Meghan makes me ashamed for being American. But that's just my opinion about the royal family. Anyway, moving on. Even the Doctor even dealt with the devil, also known as the beast, who kept possessing some of the people. And we also see the introduction of the Ood. And here's the Ood now. I mean, I know that the creator who created the Ood must have got the idea from Cthulhu. But of course, the Ood are supposed to be loyal servants who carry this little orb and makes them able to talk. They light up when they talk. And they're really... And sooner or later, in the later series, they become good friends with the Doctor. And of course, this is the first time that the Doctor ever dealt with the devil. You know, Star Trek did an episode where Captain Picard, they dealt with a planet that is owned by the devil until they finally figured out that the devil was a hologram. But you know, if Star Trek ever did an episode involving the devil, at least it will go one-on-one against the Q. You know, the godlike beings on Star Trek, every time he snaps his fingers, things appears. He's sort of a trickster. Not exactly evil, he's just testing them to see how they deal and cope with things. But anyway, the less interesting episode of all is, of course, Love and Monsters, a group of people who did encounter the Doctor and Rose. But they were like pathetic people. I mean, they just talk about their experience and then they form a band and they meet this guy named Victor Kinney, which turned out he's an Absorbaloff. And his species are the sworn enemy against the Slovene from a name I cannot pronounce anymore. I mean, I just can't pronounce it. I'm sorry, guys. But he's from a planet called Klom. My advice to you, avoid Love and Monster. It's not that good. But of course, this other episode was pretty shocking, is Fear Her, and it takes place in the Special Olympics of 2012, where all the missing kids kept getting missing, and it's supposed to happen the same time when the Olympic guy is supposed to carry his torch. But of course, turns out that the girl had one of those little alien pods that got inside her. So every time when she sees people, she draws them, and then they all disappear, vanish without a trace. Turns out her alien species are the Izolas. And what they wanted is somewhere warm, something peaceful for them to live in. So the Doctor figured out the torch has a lot more heat. So the Doctor decided to help. He shows up in the Olympics, helps out the guy who is carrying the torch, and ready to put the torch into the huge flame to start the Special Olympics. Start the Olympics. Not Special Olympics. Special Olympics is different. I've been in a Special Olympics a couple of times. And then there was a ghost from Torchwood. Yeah, that's right. The episode of the ghosts. Sorry, I almost lost track. But before Martha Jones, there was that one character that was supposed to be a sort of a cousin to Martha Jones, until it turns out the ghosts turn out to be Cybermen, and they turned her in one of their drones. They're already dead. And of course, the head of the Torchwood was, of course, Tracy Ann Omnerman. And sadly, she fell into the Cybermen and became one of them. And also Mickey showed up, along with some of the people from the alternate world. And of course, it started the war between the Cybermen versus the Daleks, which everybody knows. Everybody knows that the Daleks are more powerful than the Cybermen. I mean, the Cybermen's laser are no match to the Daleks' laser, because their armor is more adept. And of course, we see Pete, Rose's father, unites with Jackie, even though it's not the same guy that she fell in love with. And at first they didn't get along, but we can tell. Even though he loses his wife, she's a good replacement. And this is the most saddest part of the episode. It's the time where the Doctor has to say goodbye to Rose. So, he was about ready to tell Rose Tyler, I love you, but he got cut off. And then here comes the Christmas special called One-Away Bride, where we introduce another companion, which she only appears in the Christmas special, but throughout the later episodes, she ends up with the Doctor. Donna Noble, played by the absolutely hilarious and funny and lovely Catherine Tate. Now, some of you will probably ask me my thoughts on how the David Tennant Doctor all of a sudden goes for Catherine Tate to be his companion. Well, I mean, it's like if I was the Doctor, I would have forget about having Lucy Liu as my companion and have Sherry O'Terry instead as my companion. And those are the ladies I have crushes on. I mean, I love Lucy Liu and I love Sherry O'Terry. A little secret, folks. Funny women turns me on. And Sherry O'Terry, she really makes me laugh. But of course, it turns out that it's the giant spiders. The giant spiders was about ready to create problems and about ready to take over Earth. And therefore they meet Empress of the Rachnos. Yep, the Empress of the Rachnos. That's the name of those spider aliens. I mean, I hate spiders, but giant spiders... Now, if they're tarantulas, I'll be freaked out, but if they're just, completely made up, I wouldn't be scared. And of course, I gotta say about the actress, Sarah Parrish, who plays the Empress of the Rachnos. I am really impressed with her because there's tons of actresses who are really beautiful and very attractive, and they always refuse to put on prosthetics and makeup to hide their face to look like someone gruesome. But she sacrifices her beauty by being on prosthetics and makeup and always playing such... I mean, she even played some sort of a troll queen in the series Merlin. So I gotta say, she's quite a trooper. But of course, he was going to ask Donna to join with him, but she says no. But sooner or later, she'll change her mind and wants to become the companion. But anyway, now another episode called Smith and Jones, where we finally meet Martha Jones, played by Freema Agyeman, same actress who plays the cousin. Now, she's a girl who starts out as a medical doctor, and she's working her way to become the best doctor. And of course, the doctor meets her, and she starts listening to him. While at the same time, the hospital gets picked up out of the ground and into the planet Moon. And the reason why the hospital was picked up, because it was a bunch of the Jadoons. Now, you may laugh on their appearance because they look like human rhinos, but believe it or not, the Jadoons are judge, jury, and executioner. They're like the intergalactic police officers who always hunts down aliens that are wanted by the Jadoons' authority. And what they're trying to find this woman who is known as the Slab, who's like a bloodsucker who sucks blood out of people with a straw, and with the help of the plastic men. But of course, the doctor got rid of one of the plastic men by using the radiation from their X-ray machine, which the radiation doesn't affect the doctor at all. It gives him a really bad itch that he had to jump around to get it out. But of course, convinces the Jadoons that that's the one that they were looking for. Imagine if Judge Dredd was one of the Jadoons.
I am the law. You are under arrest. You betray the law.
But anyway, another episode called the Shakespeare Code, where they meet the legendary William Shakespeare, played by Dean Lennox Kelly. And it turns out that there was a group of the Carrionites who were planning to use Shakespeare's words to let their rest of the Carrionites take over London. But after they battled against the Carrionites, Queen Elizabeth I showed up, and when she recognized David Tennant's doctor, she ordered his men to capture him and have him beheaded. So they wanted to know why is Queen Elizabeth I so pissed off at the doctor. Ha! But I know why, and I'm going to tell you very, very soon. And then there was Gridlock that takes place in New York, where it turns out in the future people are in these sort of mobile cabs, more mobile futuristic cars, and they're all like sitting there like in some sort of traffic jam. And two people kidnap Martha Jones, so because they need a third passenger. But it turns out down in the bottom of the city, Mechras. You know, those giant crabs, which I remember. I didn't mention it on my old series, but the Mechras are the same Mechras from the Patrick Troughton's episode, the Macra Terror, which was pretty entertaining. And of course there, the Doctor and the Face of Bo and one of the Catkins, they all work together to help all these people and find a better place for them to go instead of being stuck in this giant traffic jam thing. And that's when the Face of Bo finally dies. And then there was the episode called The Daleks in Manhattan. It takes place in 1930. And then there's a group of these pig slaves. And of course, they're all controlled by the Daleks. And then they took this one man and made him into a human Dalek, played by Andrew Garfield. Andrew Garfield, huh? Of course, there's a whole deal with the Rootons, but it isn't. I mean, at first I thought it was the Rootons, but it's not. And then there was the Lazarus, where it involves a Lazarus monster played by Mark Gatiss. Mark Gatiss. And then there was this episode called 42, Evolving the Sun. And then here's something called Human Nature. And it's based by one of Sylvester McCoy's novels. It's based from a book, and it takes place in 1913, where the Doctor calls himself John Smith, and he's a college professor. And there's a group of scarecrows who's trying to go after the Doctor. And now the episode called Phantom Blood, it turns out that John Smith finally became the Doctor. He got his memory back. And of course, they did something that pissed the Doctor off, so he punishes them. And now in this episode called Blink, this was a Doctor Who-ish, where it involves the Weeping Angels. Now, for those of you who don't know about the Weeping Angels, they look like statues of angels. They always start like this. But if you blink or turn your head, they go like this. But what they do is they take you and put you into the past. And you have to live your entire life in the past until you die. I mean, imagine if I met a Weeping Angel. One of the Weeping Angels would probably take me all the way to the 1950s, and I'm stuck there. I can't go back to my time. So I guess I'll probably die of old age around the 60s or 70s. And of course, it had the lovely Corey Mulligan, which I gotta say, she's one of the most lovely British actress I ever laid eyes on. And then there was Europa, that involves Captain Jack coming back. I mean, they dealt with the future kind, of course. And then there was the Monmouth, where we have Shantho, played by Chippo Chung. And of course, there is also Professor Yana, played by Derek Jacobi. And that's where oh yeah, that's it. Yeah, on Mammoth. That's where we see that Chippo Cho, who plays the alien. I thought she was pretty cute, and of course I see her without the makeup on another episode I'm going to mention. And of course, Professor Yana, he starts having visions about Time Lords and such. And of course he kept the Doctor's hand. So the Doctor got his hand back. And then all of a sudden, Professor Yana discovered that he was the Master. And so one thing that he did, he gets shot, so he regenerates into John Sims, the Master. Which, I gotta say, John Sims did a pretty damn good job playing the Master. I mean, I loved his performance, the way he portrays being the Master, being the evil Time Lord and all. So now in the episode called The Sound of Drums, the Master, he calls himself Harry Saxon and became Prime Minister, along with his human wife, Lucy Saxon, played by Alexandria Moan. And of course, the Master had these things called the telecoffin, which what they are decapitated head of the survivors from the future. They just took their, the Master just took their heads and made them all electronic and does what he tells them to do. And as usual, Torchwood is with Captain Jack Harkness, and of course that's what's going to go for that whole spinoff that I'm going to be mentioning pretty much. Torchwood. Now, like the same reason I am with The Adventures of Sarah Jane, I didn't want to watch Torchwood. I mean, I know some of you are going to be booing me on this one, but I'm afraid to say I don't find Torchwood interesting because that show is geared for adults, and if it doesn't have the Doctor in it, I'm not going to watch it. And of course, the Master has himself a laser screwdriver that is way more effective than the Sonic. And he turned the Doctor into an old man. And now the last of the Time Lords, Tim Ellis, everyone called the Doctor. And now the Doctor became more powerful, and the Master dies. And even though the Doctor tells the Master to regenerate, because the Doctor, he's the last of his kind, and so is the Master. He wants another Time Lord to exist along with him, and wishes that the Master, because the Doctor and the Master has a history. They both were old friends in the past until the Master looked into that vortex and went completely mad. So now that's why he became evil. But the Master refuses to regenerate. He decided to die in the Doctor's arms. So he gave him a proper Time Lord burial by burning his body. And of course, Jack decided to go to Torchwood, and that's what it starts to spin off. And here's the big shocker. Captain Jack Harkness said that they used to call him the Face of Bo. Now we have our story. After Captain Jack Harkness becoming immortal thanks to Rose, he's been living throughout every single century until in the future, far future, he becomes the Face of Bo. He becomes this big face with a lot of these tentacles around him. And as for Martha, she decided to go to UNIT, so she leaves the Doctor. And then we go to this episode called The Voyage of the Damned, where he sees a futuristic Titanic. Wow. Titanic. And of course, he meets Astrid Peth, played by Kyle Mingu, and also meet Max Caricorn, played by George Costanza. And then there was this thing with the Heavenly Host. Turns out that Max, he was behind this. He was planning to destroy Titanic, kill a bunch of innocent people on the ship for some sort of insurance. So Astrid sacrificed herself. Too bad, I would have liked her as a companion. And then we get the episode called Partners in Crime, where Donna finally returns. And of course, she met a... here's the famous line between the Doctor and Donna. He says, I just want a mate. You want to mate? I want a mate. You're not mate with me, Sunshine. A mate. I want a mate. So here we are then. She can go with him. And of course, Donna left her keys in the bin, and it turns out she talked to Rose. Turns out Rose keeps trying to find the Doctor, but always keeps missing him. And then we have the Fire of Pompeii, where we see Colossius, played by Peter Capaldi, way before he becomes the Doctor, which I'm going to get to soon. And of course, we also see the Soothsayer, played by Karen Guinness, before she becomes a companion for Matt Smith. And it turns out that Pompeii was ruled by these Pyrovels, fire people. They decided to take the fire from the volcano so they can invade. But of course, the Doctor had to stop it, and of course, let the people from Pompeii dies. Donald was trying to warn people about it, but things like this are supposed to happen. That's the rules of time. He cannot prevent it. And then in the next episode, he goes to the planet of the Ood, where he meets the Ood people, and they were owned by Mr. Hulpin, played by Tim McIrene. And I know him from Blackadder. Hello, darling. And then there was the Sontaran stratagem, and Martha returns with Unit, and they finally meet the Doctor, and they teamed up with this smarty kid named Luke Redigan, played by Ryan Sampson. And of course, Luke turns out he was the intellectual kid who thinks he's all alone in this world, because he's so smart that most of the people he meets are not exactly in the same intellectual level of intellect. That's why he makes friends with Sontarans. Without even thinking, they're just war people. They don't give a crap about peace and intellect. They just want to wipe out the human race. And also, the Doctor meets Wilford. And Martha didn't... they met Wilford, the old man that he met during the Titanic. And of course, Martha, she didn't want to stay with the Doctor. She wants to move on. But by accident, she got stuck on the TARDIS and went to the future in the episode called The Doctor's Daughter, where we meet Jenny, played by Georgina Tennant. Now, it's kind of funny because in real life, she is actually... the reason why her last name is Tennant is because she is David Tennant's wife. And also the daughter of Peter Davison's Doctor. That's why we have that Red Nose Day episode where David Tennant and Peter Davison, as their doctors, meeting together for the first time. So pretty much, David Tennant was with his father-in-law. And it turns out there was a battle between the humans and the Hathpek. And then after that was done, Jenna got shot, but somehow she got regenerated and go off on her own mission, which sadly they never did a spinoff on that one. But her spinoff do appear in Big Finish. So Georgina still continues on doing the voice of Jenny for Big Finish. And at the same time, Martha went back home. And then there was the Unicorn and the Wasp, where they meet. Agatha Christie, played by Felina Wilgar. And it turns out there's these wasp people who calls himself the Vestipin boy. Sometimes it's so hard to pronounce every single character. And then there is Silence in the Library, where there is this little girl who is called Charlotte Lux, meeting her therapist named Mr. Moon. And it turns out, there is this shadow that eats the flesh out of your skin. And of course it turns out Charlotte Lux, she's the library. She's the main frame. And of course we also meet River Song for the first time, played by Alex Kingston, and the Doctor wanted to know how she knows so much about him in the next episode called The Forest of the Dead, where it turns out the shadow, called the Veshonarada, they pretty much, if you walk into that shadow, they eat the flesh out of you like you jumped into acid smoke. And of course it turns out that River Song has her own sonic screwdriver and knows the Doctor's real name. And of course, River Song dies, but he put her subconscious into the vortex of the library. Not the vortex, but the matrix. And then there was this episode called Midnight, where it dealt with the Midnight entity. And we have Captain Magaboo, played by Norma Desmarais. And then there was the episode called Turn Left, where a time bug got into Donna's back, and she turned left instead of right, and created a whole paradox where the Doctor dies, and the rest of the human race and the rest of the planets are all dying because the Doctor's not around. Until she met Rose. And that's when they met the Captain, of course, to put a stop to that time bug. And then there was one of the greatest epic shows, one of the most unforgettable longer series. And I know this show is getting longer because David Tennant did a lot more than what other actors did in their adventures. Where it turns out there's the episode called Stolen Earth, where the Daleks, they took Earth and all the other planets. So now the Doctor has to go to meet the Shadow Proclamation, who is in charge of the Jadoon. And also he meets the Shadow Archivist, played by Kelly Hunter. And then the introduction of Davros, who is in charge, and of course the second in command, the Dalek Khan. Khan! Sorry, what can I say? I'm kind of a Trekkie. And of course the whole deal with bees. I mean, they notice that all the bees are gone. Bees. My God. And then it's the first time that all the Doctor's companion got together for the first time. And on Journey's End, the Doctor's hand got regenerated, and now he has the new body, which I like to call him the Hand Doctor. And of course, Donna touched the hand, so they kind of connected themselves. So now the Hand Doctor becomes part human, has one heart, while Donna, she becomes Dr. Donna because she got the Doctor's mind. Oh yeah, and one thing I know about Journey's End, the Daleks were speaking German, which I kind of find it really funny. After all, the creators who created the Daleks did base the Daleks from the Germans during World War II. You know, the Third Reich. And the Dr. Donna helped with all the other doctors, and all the planets goes back. And of course, the clone and of course they took Rose and her family back to their alternate world. And of course, he left his Hand Doctor with Rose, which I gotta say, that was pretty stupid. I mean, even Billie Piper herself thought it was pathetic. And the problem with Donna, she cannot process all the memories that she got from the Doctor. I mean, it's killing her mind really bad. So, the Doctor had to make her forget. And then we got a couple of solo episodes, like there is The Next Doctor, where the Doctor, turns out he meets another Doctor, played by David Morrissey. Now, he did a pretty good job. I mean, I would see potential of him playing the Doctor one of these days, but in this episode, it turns out his name was Jackson Lake, who lost his wife from the Cybermen, and of course he has these rememberer things that made him think he was the Doctor, and of course he has Rosita, played by Valerie Shabalala. You know, I think she's a really good, I mean, she did a pretty good job playing Rosalita. You know, I'm thinking about in the future, maybe she should play the Doctor in the future. But that's just a what if. And of course, this woman who is in league with the Cybermen, they created this cyber shape. Shades. It's like a giant mecha robot. And of course, the Doctor, he saved Jackson's son. So now he's finally united with his son. And then there was the other episode called Planet Dies, where there's Lady Katrina, played by Michelle Ryan. And of course, Lady Katrina, she's a thief. And of course, Captain Magaboo, she calls this guy named McCormick Tyler, played by Lee Evans. And of course, they even met these creatures who call themselves the Servan. They are the Tretovan. And of course, they had to avoid these stingrays. They are metal monsters that eats flesh. Right off the bone. And then there was the other one called the Water of Mars, take place in 2059. Turns out the water is turning people into zombies, and it was left behind by the Ice Warriors of Mars. And of course, he had to save this woman named Maya Benton, played by Gima Khan. And of course, he was supposed to save that one woman, but she didn't want to live. She wanted to die where she's supposed to. And of course, that's when the Doctor mentioned about him being the Time Lord Victorious. It's supposed to be where the Doctor is now changing time for his own benefit, which that is wrong. I mean, we already had the Doctor who becomes the Valiard, but do we need the Time Lord Victorious? Now, of course, that became a spin-off in the comics and even in the in Big Finish, and even a couple of novels too. And then after that, the Doctor. I mean, David Tennant did a couple of animated episodes, like there is one called The Infinite Quest, where Doctor and Martha starts dealing with the Balatazar. And then there was Dreamland, where he ends up in Area 51, meets Mr. Dread, and of course, a couple of other aliens involved, which I cannot pronounce the name, so I'm just showing you guys. And then here was the final Doctor Who episode called The End of Time 1 and 2, where the Doctor meets the Ood, warning him about the Master returning. And, of course, Wolverton teams up with the Doctor. And then they meet a woman, played by Claire Bloom, who is telling Wolfred, about the Doctor. And then the whole deal with the Ben Vakri. And the Master turned... Oh yeah, the Ben Vakri, they're these spiky aliens who was trying to take the technology from the Doctor. But the Master, he used the machine to turn everybody into him. While at the same time, people from Gallifrey decided to show up in the on Earth so they could turn Earth into a new Gallifrey, and we have Lord President Rassilon, played by Timothy Dalton. The Time Lords has arrived, and now it showed that the Master is battling against Rassilon, and that's when the Master battled against Rassilon and brought the Time Lords back to Gallifrey. And then that's when the Doctor is about ready to regenerate. And before he regenerates, he says, "I don't want to go." And then the Doctor regenerates into Matt Smith, which I'm going to talk to you about Matt Smith later. But right now, this is it for my David Tennant review of the Tennant era of Doctor Who. Oh yeah! Oh, sorry about that, folks. I almost forgot. This is a bonus review, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry it took me so long, but bear with me, folks, because the David Tennant didn't stop there. Well, let's talk about the, for a bonus review, this is the 60th anniversary. I decided to kill two birds with one stone. So let's start with the 3 episodes for the 60th anniversary that David Tennant have done. Shall we? Now, let's start with this one episode called The Star Beast, based on a 1984 comic book, which is supposed to be Tom Baker's Doctor, but this time it is the Doctor and Donna gets reunited. I mean, the Donna ain't supposed to remember about the Doctor, but her daughter Rose absorbed most of the Doctor's memories, so now Donna is safe now. She cannot die anymore. Her daughter Rose, from the guy that she married, now David Tennant continue on with adventures with Donna. And he meets Rose Noble. Kind of surprising that Donna named her daughter Rose, played by Yasmin Finney. And it involves this creature called the Beep the Meep. At first he looks so adorable, but it turns out they're bad guys because there are these Wraith warriors who's trying to find them and exterminate Beep the Meep. And of course we have the introduction of the first paraplegic character named Charlene Bingham, played by Ruth Medley. And of course, there is Wild Blue Yonder, where the Doctor and Donna meets these doppelgangers. And then there was The Giggle, where the Doctor meets Wilfred. And then we introduce Kate Lethbridge Stewart, played by Gemma Redgrave. Gemma Redgrave. And I'll talk more about Kate Lethbridge Stewart in the Matt Smith era, so don't worry. And of course, the the Doctor reunites with another companion, old companion that is, Mel Bush, played by Bonnie Langford. And this time this time the Doctor reunites with a very old enemy that he haven't met since he was William Hartnell, which is the Toymaker. Now, that was an episode I never mentioned before, but I kind of briefly did, that the Toymaker was played by Michael Garn, but now he is played by Neil Patrick Harris. Now, who is the Toymaker? Well, the Toymaker, he's like if Q, he's kind of like Q. He makes things appear with his magical powers. He's like a god, but he also kills people, so he doesn't teach them lessons, he just kills them. Unlike Q, he just teach people lessons about what they should get prepared for the next thing in their mission. And of course, the Toymaker said that he grabbed the Master and turned him into his gold tooth, right here. But he shoots the beam at David Tennant's Doctor, and now this is the stupidest, lamest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. The Doctor did a bi-regeneration, and he bi-regenerate with Juti-Gatwa. And I will tell you more about Juti-Gatwa on my Whittaker era, because there's a lot of things I got to say about Juti-Gatwa and his era of Doctor Who briefly, because the show is still going, but I'm hearing that they're failing because most of the diehard Whovians are hating the way the show itself is becoming. And of course, here's one thing I always wanted to, even though Tom Baker and David Tennant are the most iconic Doctors throughout history, I'm surprised that none of the anniversaries that Tom Baker ever crossed over with David Tennant. Ever teamed up together. Even though Tom Baker showed up in the 50th, but he's not the Doctor, he was the curator. Until I was happy to have this. Out of Time. And it's the first time you see Tom Baker and David Tennant together battling against the Daleks. And I wanted to see it along while listening it. So thanks to this certain YouTuber who goes by the name of Josh Snars. Now, I gotta say, Josh, now, if you're watching my review of the Tennant era, one thing I gotta say to you, well done on what you did. You animated an episode of this. And of course, as usual, due to YouTube, he removed the sound and the lyrics and the music. But if you order it on bigfinish.com or do the easier way, buy a CD of it and play the video, you can pretty much see how it all works. So, well done, Josh. You did a pretty damn good job. I love it. I love it a lot. Well, folks, this is my review of the Tennant era of Doctor Who. If any of you like this review, please leave a comment down below, hit like and subscribe for more. And this is Michael A. Grimm, a.k.a. the Multi-Voice Doctor. And I'm saying exactly what David Tennant said. I don't see.